Welcome to the Vamos podcast. I am Freddy Rivera, your host. And if you're wondering what Vamos means, it's Spanish for let's go.
Welcome to the Vamos podcast. I'm your host, Freddy Rivera, where we talk about supercharging your personal, professional potential, and to hear from folks who have been there, done that, such as investors, entrepreneurs, professionals, hear about their journey and the actions and steps that got them there. I'm going to talk about mindset, because without the right mindset, everything gets harder. Something bad can happen. You're going to meet folks that are not nice, that are jerks. And again, without that right mindset, that can completely throw you off. You might look at things differently with a different mindset, because that kind of stuff is going to tick you off. It's not going to sit well with you, but you can't control what others are doing. You can only control your own actions. I'm telling you this because I've lived it. I felt ticked off. I felt, why not me? I felt, why can't I do that? And it's not about that. It's just about competing with yourself and making sure that you're pushing yourself in a way that is based off of your journey and what you have in front of you and what you know in terms of knowledge. And I'd like to share with you an example, if I can, which is basically early on in my professional career. I wasn't really happy. I almost would say I felt miserable and I couldn't really get out of bed, but my colleagues really made the role and really made it a lot easier to come into work. And as colleagues do, you go to happy hour and you vent and you try to give each other advice and help each other where we can, right? But eventually I thought, after going to a few happy hours and hearing the same things and the same things happening, I thought, why don't I try to do something? And as Jim Rohn once said, if you don't like your job, if you don't like your situation, if you don't like your address, then move. You're not a tree, you can move. You can do something about it. And I just started to focus on my mindset, and focus on what I could control and my actions. So by changing my mindset and ignoring some of the bad stuff that was going on at work, because there were some good things, right? So you have to take the good with the bad. I chose not to go to as many happy hours. And instead, I started practicing interviewing, networking with other professionals or other companies, applying for jobs. And some of those jobs, most of those jobs, I would say, were jobs that I didn't personally think I would get, or that I was good enough, frankly. One night, I got a call. While washing dishes, I got a call from a recruiter. That recruiter said that they were representing a staffing agency on behalf of Google, as they were staffing up a lot of recruiters. I answered their questions. We did a quick interview, had no time to prepare. And I just thought the whole time, this is going to go nowhere, but let's give it a shot. You never know. I ended up getting an interview, but because it was a contract role, and at the time I was working in a full-time role, I had to drive myself. I didn't have much money, just given that I was really early on in my career. And I basically set it up where I had a friend who they had a spare place to stay, but they were really far away from where I needed to interview at. So basically I had to drive after work from LA to Dublin, California, which is out of the way. And then from Dublin, I had to drive to Sunnyvale, which is where my interview was. On the way back down from Sunnyvale, I ended up running into a sandstorm. And recently graduated, I had no clue. I thought sandstorms were in the desert or other countries, but I had no idea they were happening in California, where I had lived most of my life. And I was driving alone. I was exhausted, and I was in my Toyota Corolla. And if you know anything about Toyota Corollas, they're not an SUV or anything like that. And we got to a standstill, and basically, the car in front of me was edging ever so much forward until the point where I couldn't see them anymore, even though their lights were on and I was right behind them. And I was kind of frozen because, again, I'd never done this before. And I just thought, screw it. That car can inch forward. All I have to do is keep the car straight and I should be fine, and watch out for the car in front of me that I don't hit them, right? So I just kind of said, you know what? If they can do it, I can do it as well. And I also thought another thought, which was, if I have to drive this whole way and I have to go through this sandstorm, there's no way I'm not getting this job. There's no way I'm not getting this job based off of everything I have to go through, drive myself. I think the drive total was 8 to 10 hours. It should have been 6-ish, but I had prepared so much for the role. I had wanted it so badly, But the most important thing was that I shifted my mindset. I shifted that I belonged at Google. I deserved to be at Google. I could be an asset to Google. And lo and behold, I did get the job. I did the interview. Before I got back to my place that I was staying at, 10, 15 minutes away, they had already called me, gave me the offer. They actually offered me more money than what I had asked for. I was a little bit scared given that I was in a full-time role with great benefits, great perks, lots of potential upside, but it just wasn't it. It just wasn't it for me. And I just thought, I think there's a little bit more I could do here. And I just changed my mindset. I believed in myself. I got out of that rut of like, I'm not good enough or I can't get this job. I also had to move from LA, to the Bay Area, not knowing anyone, really knowing the area. But I just thought I needed to expand my mindset and I needed to grow. After getting the role and returning the key to my friend to their place, which, to this day, really, really thankful for them. On my drive back home, the next morning, again, exhausted from the sandstorm, from the interview, from preparing, one of my really awesome colleagues, let's call him Neo, the one from the Matrix, he gives me a call, just checking up on me. How did it go? What do you think? You going to take it? They just said something that really stayed with me to this day, which was, wow, you're basically betting on yourself, which a lot of people are scared to do. And I'm very happy and proud of you because when we met, you were an intern. And sometimes you got to bet on yourself, but it's okay to kind of push yourself because if you fail, you at least tried. And if you fail enough times, you're going to succeed. And luckily for me, I ended up getting that role. But that really shifted my mindset because number one, if you push yourself enough, if you study enough, if you do the right things, you're going to end up getting that role. I got a role as a contractor at Google from a full-time role with a 401k, pension plans, with some awesome colleagues. But I just thought long-term, I thought that was the right move for me and my career. And I've never looked back since. I've been able to get a lot more positions and roles and conversations than I ever have since then. Another example would be I was interviewing a lot. I was interviewing tons and I just was getting rejected, which reminds me a lot of what folks are going through right now. They're applying to various positions. They're getting told various things, getting told nothing at times as well. I just didn't know what was going on. And I was talking to one of my buddies, let's call him Wiggins. And the issues I was experiencing at work were due to new management, them wanting to put their own stamp on things. And they had a different way of thinking. And they wanted to be the person that signed off on things. And I completely understand that. Ultimately, I thought this is out of my control. And I can't do anything about it. I can only do what I can control, which is my work and what I get asked to do. And upon reaching to Wiggins, checking up on me, how's it going? Are the interviews going? Any way I can help? They were asking me a couple probing questions like any, good recruiter would. And eventually landed on something that really helped me out, which was basically that I seemed a little off than I normally was. And they asked me, is it possible that what I'm feeling from my role at the company that I was at, that frustration is coming through, in the interviews? I gave it a quick thought, really paused and thought about it. And I said, you're right. I think that's why I'm not, progressing further because I could do everything that was asked of me, but for whatever reason, I just wasn't moving forward. So I just thought let's try that out. That might be what is going on. I just made sure to do everything and anything that I could, which was not have a meeting back to back right before the interview or making sure that I meditate or I did some yoga, whether it's for 5 seconds or 5 minutes right before the interview. I'm not a yogi or anything like that, but I just made sure I was in a very calm state before I logged on to an interview because number one, I wanted to give myself the best chance possible to get that job. And number two, even if I didn't get that job, I wanted to give that interviewer and that company the best version of myself because you never know. You might not get that job now, but you might get that job in the future or might get another job in the future because there might be a better role coming up. So that's kind of what I was thinking. But it took a friend to bring it up to me because I couldn't see that. I was too close to it. And my mindset was stuck on my frustration, my level of not being able to get things done and not being able to focus on what I could control. it might have been putting folks off in the interview, right? My mindset at the time was not aligned with what I wanted to portray, which was hardworking, collaborative, teammate, lots of levity, get the job done and really work with clients and candidates in the best way possible. And as soon as I worked on these, I found a job that was way better right away than my current situation. So I owe a lot to Wiggins and friends kind of bringing these things up. We'll talk a little bit more in depth on what to do, what not to say, during interviews. Like, my boss doesn't know what they're talking about. I don't like X about my role and my company, or everyone I work with is a big goober, because those things might exist at that company. They might be that role might be the things that you don't like, right? And that might put, again, people off, and you've kind of ended the interview before it's even started, right? Because I've had people tell me stuff like, I don't like that my company is so data driven. And in my mind, as a recruiter, as an interviewer, I'm thinking we're very data driven as well. So just a quick example of something to not to do and kind of not help your own case, right? And somebody comes to mind, which is basically David Goggins. David Goggins used to be way over 250 pounds as an adult, went through a lot of trauma and a lot of abuse growing up, unfortunately, as many folks do, but they changed their mindset. And if you know anything about Goggins, maybe not the nicest, most, conventional communication style, but I think the ultimate message is you have to change your mindset. You have to make yourself get into that mindset because you deserve it and that's within you. And now, David Goggins is an ultra marathoner, former Navy SEAL, probably always Navy SEAL, and ultra marathoner. And again, he used to weigh 250 pounds. That's 250 pounds. And he could have continued his life that way, but he willed himself because it's within all of us to do so, right? And that's kind of why I'm making this video and bringing these things up, because I know what it's like when there's nowhere else to go. And sometimes you have to be your own coach. Sometimes you have to be your own cheering section, your own advocate, unfortunately. And if you're in a situation that you feel not so great, if you take action or you take it a step at a time, you'll eventually get out of it one way or another. And there's a saying that really kind of resonated with me when I heard it as a child. Drop by drop is the water pot filled. Likewise, the wise man gathering it little by little fills himself with good, from the Buddha. You'll always be in that situation because your mindset might be negative. But if you're working on something drop by drop, then that water pot is eventually going to get filled. If you've ever been hiking, there's a saying, 1 foot in front of the other, and you'll end up reaching that summit, base camp, or your car, right? Whatever it might be. But another thing comes to mind. I'm currently reading a book called The Gap in the Gain, which is basically a book about happiness and how you should focus on your progress versus what you don't have or what you have not achieved. Because if you focus on what you have not achieved, then that's not a good way to kind of show progress, because you might have made a lot of progress, but because you're focusing on what you don't have or what somebody else is achieving or that other person got a promotion, you're never going to feel in a good state, because that voice that tells you you can't, or your friends and family that tell you you shouldn't, at the end of the day, you're in charge of your life. You're in charge of your actions and your attitude. And if you really think that voice of doubt is you, it is you. But next time that voice tells you something like that, instead of thinking that I can't do something, or it'll be embarrassing, or it'll be very difficult, or it'll be very hard, why don't you think, what if I succeed? Or what if this is truly successful? What does that look like? What does that feel like? What would that entail? I choose to think that way. And obviously it's still scary. But again, someone recently told me too, like, do it scared. I've heard that a lot, but I heard that recently and it really resonated with me. And doing it scared is a lot better than not doing it at all. Because if you don't do it at all, you've already not giving yourself a chance to fail. You're not giving yourself a chance to succeed, but you've also denied yourself the opportunity to learn something from that and maybe grow and try it again, right? Because if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. That's from Wayne Dyer, really great author and speaker and motivational speaker. And I know we're all busy. I know we have work and personal things. Some of us even have the joy of children in our life, and we have to take care of them, of course. But wouldn't it be worth to having somewhat of a different mindset, more positive, worth it for your work, for your clients, for your own business, and more importantly, again, for your family, for your loved ones, to just have that positive mindset and maybe not vent in front of them, or where they can hear you about what you don't have or the problems that you're facing or what you can't pay for. It's better to shift that mindset to, instead of what you don't have, what do you have? And from what do you have, how do you leverage that to become even more or get you closer to your goals? So instead of paying attention to the things you might tell yourself, what if I fail? What if I, am completely embarrassed? Why not instead ask yourself, what if I succeed? If you have the time, picture it, write it down. How does it feel? And and after you do that, and about how good of a feeling that is, think of some ways or actions or goals that'll get you there. And if you have time also this week, write down your why. That was a big help for me. What do you mean by why? I'll tell you. Your why is definitely something that's very powerful, but a why could be, why do you get up in the morning for work? Why are you taking extra classes? Why are you saving your money? Why are you putting up with difficult clients and a boss? And remember that why, because that'll help your mindset and keep you on track. Some people's why is their children. I do this for my kids. I do this for my family. Remember that. Why are you working so hard? So you can save money to buy a house. So you can provide a, safe and stable home for them. That is an incredible why. But if we don't remember or even realize what our why is, and we just focus on what we don't have, like, I didn't get that promotion, I didn't get that bonus, I have to drop off and pick up my children myself. I know it's tough, but let's focus on what we do have, what is within our control, our attitude and our actions. Something I learned from Pharrell Williams, not directly. I'm a big fan of Pharrell and all the interviews that he does because he's so positive, he's so optimistic, and he's very forward thinking. But it's always good to pause and just kind of like look back and just kind of check out, hey, what is my progress? What is the distance? Measure that distance figuratively or literally, whatever you want to do. But sometimes that's really, really good because you should be proud of the progress that you've made, no matter how fast or slow or big or small. Progress is progress because drop by drop, that bowl gets filled. And sometimes it's a big leap. Sometimes it's slow going, but it's about progress. It's about trying. It's about learning, because if you fail and you don't give up, you're still going to try. And that's what it's all about in terms of like the Vamos spirit. It doesn't matter if you fail or if you don't get it. It's just about trying and continuing to try and shifting that mindset from when I was younger, hey, we don't have AC. My car doesn't have AC. I'm hot at home. I'm hot in the car. I get to work. I don't have the things that some other folks have, but that's okay because I'm working on it. I was going to school. I was working towards a degree so I can get a great job, so I can work Monday through Friday and not work Saturday, Sunday, weekends, holidays, evenings. It took a while. It took a while to finish high school. It took a while to get to college and finish that and work part-time, full-time and side hustles and help my parents with their side hustles. But one day it'll get better, because if you keep trying, if you keep swinging, you're going to get there. You really are. Because the folks that give up, that's it. There is no more shots after that because you haven't put yourself in a position to play the game, whatever that might be. You just got to keep trying. I really thank you, dear listener, for hanging on this long. And we're trying, we're learning as we go. But our next episode will be about networking and the power of having the right network to help you and each other achieve those goals or keep yourselves accountable. Because learning and doing on your own is great, but what I've learned recently is that if you learn from others, that's a game changer. But even more of a game changer is if you learn from their mistakes. Because if you learn from their mistakes, now you're supercharging your development and the path you're going to take to get there. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next episode, because you're going to go a lot farther, faster, quicker together versus alone. Thank you for listening to our first episode of the Vamos podcast with me, Freddy Rivera. Check us out on all places. Podcasts are available, Spotify, Apple, anywhere else. We also have this as a video on YouTube. And in the future, we'll have some really awesome guests that are entrepreneurs, investors, professionals in tech, non-tech, and even trades, because I want to provide this stuff to y'all so that if you don't want to go to college, you can find a path to go somewhere else and find a career and do the things that you want to do with whoever you want to do. And please, tell your friends about the show if you feel like you got some value from this. Tell your enemy, share with them. Just keep going and try some of those exercises. Like, what if you're going to be successful? What if you come up with your why and you remember why it is you're putting yourself through what you're putting yourself. My aura is positive and I don't promote no junk. So thanks for listening to the Vamos podcast, and let's go.